I never felt rocked by the low expectations that strangers would have of me. I knew that was part of the deal, and in fact, part of the delight in smashing those low expectations. I'm the youngest of 10 kids, 8 girls and 2 boys. My mom died when I was very young. That was kind of a defining event. My father was a social worker in Harlem, so he was very engaged and he just knew everything about politics. My father used to say to me, "You're destined for greatness." It was strange because my father was kind of quite old-fashioned. But this idea that I was going to be a civil rights lawyer, he was totally on board with that. He knew that was going to happen. One of the things I learned when I first started litigating was that I had to give a lot of the judges a minute just to get used to the whole thing. I didn't sound the way they expected. I didn't look the way they expected. So I would give it a minute. And I always felt that I could see the moment when it clicked and they were now paying attention to me. The question on the table to the Supreme Court was whether or not judicial elections are even covered by the Voting Rights Act. I litigated that hard-fought case for most of the 5 years I was at LDF, and we were successful, and we prevailed on that. But when we returned back to the lower court to figure out how we would change the election system, we were stymied by the courts below, who basically said there's no real remedy for this. To create a system in which African Americans can elect judges of their choice will create a biased judiciary. It was tough. It was quite extraordinary. I wanted to teach because I wanted to write. I wanted to have a chance to talk about what my clients told me was the reason that they thought, for example, it was important to be able to elect African American judges, to have a diverse judiciary, and to believe within their own community that the system of justice includes them and their very unique experience of being African American. LDF felt like my professional home. So it's astonishing to me to be back leading the organization. You've been given a window into seeing the fault lines, the parts of the democracy that are weak. And your job is to make them stronger. You make them stronger by ensuring that the promise of equality and dignity and due process is available to people who are at the bottom. We are undergoing tremendous change as a country, the change that comes with exposure, when we see ourselves, when we can no longer hide behind a pretty story, and we have to be real grown-up citizens and figure out what our role should be in moving this country forward. That's never fun. The civil rights movement started the same way. The country had to see itself. What has been revealed in the last 2 years has been the reality in African American communities for decades. It's very convenient to talk about Black Lives Matter because people now know those 3 buzzwords. I lead an organization that has been at this for 75 years. I think at this moment, for many people, it feels overwhelming. It feels like, oh my God, it's too big, we'll never get it all done. And I always say, well, then we better get on with it. The power is really when we all decide to make that commitment. But it all begins with the individual, the power of an individual to commit themselves to say, I'm gonna both talk and walk equality. I'm gonna both talk and walk diversity, which means it's gonna show up in all the things I do in my life. And that's the commitment I've made for my life, and I think others have to make as well.